Pam Bondi said one sentence she never expected would come back to haunt her. One sentence that Congressman Ted Lieu would later rip open on the House floor like a warning flare. She looked straight into a Fox News camera and told the country, "The Epstein client list is sitting on my desk right now." From that moment on, everything changed, because if that list was truly sitting on her desk, the next question became unavoidable. Where is it now? And why has every attempt to uncover it since then run into walls, delays, redactions, and carefully worded excuses? On the House floor, Congressman Ted Lieu didn't dance around it. He began by calling out broken promises. Donald Trump campaigned on ending inflation and lowering costs on day one. That didn't happen. Inflation continued to rise, with the latest report showing CPI climbing to 2.7% above expectations and core inflation hitting 2.9%. Instead of addressing rising costs, Lieu argued, Republicans pushed policies that stripped health care from millions. But then he pivoted hard, because while Americans were struggling to afford groceries, rent, and health care, something else was quietly resurfacing: the Epstein files. Lieu reminded the country that back in February, Attorney General Pam Bondi publicly acknowledged the existence of a Jeffrey Epstein client list. Not hinted at it, not speculated about it. She stated plainly that it was sitting on my desk right now. So Lieu asked the obvious question, where is it? What is Pam Bondi hiding? He made clear this wasn't a partisan issue. He criticized the handling of the Epstein case under the Biden administration, and he's criticizing it now under the Trump administration. In his words, "This is not about party. It's about the powerful protecting the powerful." Lieu pointed out that documents already released show Donald Trump appearing repeatedly in Epstein-related materials, photographs, videos, and flight logs documenting past associations. He wasn't making legal conclusions, he was stating documented connections that have long been part of the public record, and that's what makes Bondi's statements so explosive. If the client list existed, if it was real enough to be sitting on her desk, then the sudden shift to secrecy makes no sense. Why acknowledge it publicly, only to stonewall every attempt at transparency afterward? Why release fragments while withholding the core documents the public keeps asking for? That single sentence collapsed government's credibility on this issue, because now the question isn't whether the files exist. It's who benefits from keeping them hidden, and every delay, every redaction, every procedural excuse only reinforces the same fear Americans have carried for years, that when investigations climb too close to power, the rules change. This isn't about gossip. It's about trust. And right now, that trust is hanging by a thread. There are public statements from Donald Trump about Jeffrey Epstein. There are also court filings from alleged Epstein victims that directly name Trump. Those records already exist. That is precisely why the Epstein files must be released in full. This isn't speculation. It's documented history. And the American people deserve transparency. Ted Lieu then briefly addressed another major issue: Ukraine. He argued that the only realistic way to bring Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table is to ensure Russian forces are defeated on the battlefield. According to Lieu, peace does not come from hesitation or weakness. It comes from making it clear that aggression will not succeed. He stated his support for President Trump's decision to send Patriot missile systems to Ukraine. He also backed the plan to replace European military equipment when European allies transfer their weapons to Ukraine. In his view, this strategy sends a clear signal to Putin: Russia cannot win this war, and continuing it will only deepen its losses. With that, Lieu yielded back his time. But what happened next revealed the true weight of the moment. This was not a casual political shot or routine congressional oversight. This was about information powerful people never expected to face public scrutiny. And Ted Lieu was preparing to pull those secrets into the open. What made the moment so effective was how calm it began. Lieu didn't open with accusations or outrage. He started with policy, inflation data, economic performance, broken promises. He cited numbers and facts, pointing out that the administration had failed to deliver on cost of living relief, At first, it sounded like standard congressional criticism, predictable, even forgettable. Then the shift came. It was subtle, controlled, deliberate, like someone setting a trap and waiting patiently for it to close. Lieu brought up Pam Bondi's own words from February. Not hearsay, not rumor. Her public statement. Her claim that the Epstein client list was sitting on my desk. No qualifiers. No caution. No ambiguity. She wanted the public to believe she possessed the truth, but months passed and nothing happened. No release. No timeline. No explanation. Just silence from the very official who said she had the documents the country has been demanding for years. Ted Lieu wasn't willing to let that contradiction stand. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't attack personally. He didn't dramatize the issue. Instead, he laid out the question with surgical precision. If the list was on your desk, then show it. What happened between the moment you claimed to have it and the moment the public asked to see it? Why did transparency suddenly disappear? Why did confidence turn into avoidance? Lieu made one thing unmistakably clear. This was not a partisan issue. He criticized the handling of the Epstein case under multiple administrations. His concern wasn't about party loyalty. It was about accountability, and that is why the moment landed so hard, because when facts are laid out calmly, without theatrics, the silence that follows becomes impossible to ignore. He made it clear that this wasn't a new fight for him. He had pushed for the release of the Epstein files under the previous administration, and he was pushing again now because the behavior never changed. No matter who was in power, the same thing happened every time. Transparency disappeared the moment the truth reached people who had something to lose. That realization settled heavily over the room. This was no longer a debate between Democrats and Republicans. It wasn't about ideology or party loyalty. It was about power versus truth. And the longer Lieu spoke, the harder it became to ignore the contradictions piling up in plain sight. Pam Bondi didn't just acknowledge the existence of the list. She spoke about it casually, almost dismissively, as if it were nothing more than routine paperwork. She described it like a simple document resting on her desk alongside ordinary meeting notes. But there has never been anything simple about the Epstein case. Not the investigation, not the victims, and certainly not the missing information. Lieu highlighted a pattern that many Americans have already noticed but rarely hear spelled out so clearly. Every time officials promise the Epstein files are coming, what arrives is incomplete. Pages are blacked out. Sections are missing. Key names vanish. Each release raises more questions than answers. And every time someone claims they have the full list, that list somehow never becomes public. He didn't need to say what came next. The implication hung in the silence between his sentences. If Pam Bondi truly had the list and that list never surfaced, then it didn't disappear by accident. Someone made a decision. Someone chose secrecy over disclosure. That's when Lieu shifted to what is already on the public record, not rumors, not speculation, just facts, photographs, archived video clips, flight logs, statements from witnesses, court filings submitted years ago by alleged victims. He didn't need to name specific individuals to make the message unmistakable. The connections already visible in the existing documents are enough to raise serious concerns. Those public records show that powerful people are already woven throughout the known evidence. And if that's what's visible now, it raises an unavoidable question. What names appear in the documents that remain sealed, redacted, or withheld? Lieu then emphasized something that made the tension in the room even heavier. Despite years of investigations, partial releases, and official statements, the public still does not have the full client list. They don't have the complete flight logs. They don't have a full accounting of who visited Epstein when they were there, or why that missing list matters. It represents the unanswered gaps investigators, journalists, and survivors have been trying to piece together for years. It could clarify timelines. It could confirm patterns. It could explain decisions that never made sense. And without it, the story remains fragmented, fueling doubt and suspicion, not because people want conspiracy theories, But because the truth keeps being withheld, and Bondi was the central figure in that contradiction. She was the one who publicly claimed she had the list. She was the one who spoke about transparency as if it were finally within reach. She was the one who suggested that the long silence surrounding the Epstein case could finally be broken. But instead of answers, the silence only became more noticeable. Lieu didn't make accusations. He didn't jump to conclusions. He didn't speculate about motives. He laid out the facts as plainly as possible. If Pam Bondi truly had the list, then she still has it and needs to release it. And if she no longer has it, then the public deserves a clear explanation for why. Those were the only two logical possibilities, and both raised serious concerns. Either she was withholding information the public had every right to see, or she had misled the country by claiming possession of something she never intended to release. Neither scenario aligned with transparency. Neither scenario reflected a commitment to truth, and neither inspired confidence in the institutions tasked with delivering accountability. That's when Lieu delivered the sentence that quickly spread across social media and cable news. He called it exactly what it was. This was a case of the powerful protecting the powerful. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The statement landed because it matched what everyone in the room already understood. Viewers understood it too, and whether Bondi meant to or not, she had placed herself squarely on the wrong side of that reality the moment she said the list was sitting on her desk. From that moment forward, the burden of explanation belonged to her. Lieu then zoomed out and reminded the room that this wasn't an isolated incident. Previous administrations handled the Epstein files in strikingly similar ways. Promises were made. Transparency was pledged. And then came the same familiar tactics: redactions, delays, official statements claiming full disclosure even when survivors, attorneys, and journalists knew critical information was still missing. The pattern repeated itself across years, across political parties and across government institutions. With Bondi, nothing had changed. The problem was no longer one individual. It was a system that breaks down the moment accountability threatens people with influence. Just as it seemed he was wrapping up, Lieu shifted again. This time he moved to foreign policy, Ukraine, and the broader consequences of failing to confront power without fear. At first it sounded like an abrupt change, but the connection was deliberate and clear. Accountability cannot function as a selective principle. And in that moment Lieu connected every thread: inflation, broken promises, foreign policy, the Epstein files. Each issue reflected the same underlying truth. Leaders cannot demand public trust while concealing facts. They cannot make sweeping claims and then hide the very evidence they said they possessed. And they cannot lecture the world about accountability while protecting powerful figures at home. By the time he finished, the room had gone still. Not the quiet of disinterest, but the silence that follows impact. Everyone understood what had just happened. A contradiction too large to ignore had been placed squarely in the center of the conversation, one that Pam Bondi could not dismiss with talking points or procedural language, because the question was now unavoidable. If the list was truly sitting on her desk, where is it? No spin, no delays. No legal gymnastics. Just a single, direct question that refuses to fade. And the longer it goes unanswered, the louder it grows. Every day without the list, without the full files, without real transparency, deepens the suspicion that someone, somewhere, has something to hide. That's why this moment is spreading online. Not because of political theater, not because of partisan outrage, but because someone finally said what millions of people have been thinking, plainly and without hesitation. Someone named the silence for what it was. Someone forced attention back onto the one sentence Bondi likely never expected to follow her. It's sitting on my desk. People don't forget statements like that. And they certainly don't forget when those statements quietly disappear. Until answers come, until the files are unsealed, until the full truth is released, the question will continue to echo. Why say you have the list if you never intended to show it? If you found this breakdown compelling, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There's much more still unfolding. I'll be here to break it down every step of the way. If the United States expects transparency from other nations, if it demands accountability from foreign leaders, and if it insists that corruption be confronted abroad, then it has to meet that same standard at home. You cannot call on other countries to show courage while refusing to confront secrecy within your own government. The message was unmistakable. Accountability cannot be selective, and credibility cannot survive double standards.